So there's a lot of factors that go into selecting the perfect brisket out of your either meat market or your grocery store. I wanted to go over a couple of things that I look for when I go to select a brisket. First of all, I have a piece of brisket right here that I'm about to smoke, right? There's 3 grades that usually meat comes with. Now 4, but typically there's 3. You're looking at your select, your choice, and your prime. Prime being the most expensive of the 3 because it has more marbling. It's a better cut of meat. But when you're smoking brisket, if you cook it low and slow, you can get away with purchasing the lower end ones, which are your select or your choice, and they still come out pretty good. But some of the things that I look for when I'm going into the grocery store, I wanted to give you some tips. Well, first of all, you get this brisket that you're looking at in your store. The first thing you want to do is you want to feel the brisket, especially the fat cap. It should have a nice little fat cap on it, but if the fat cap feels very, very stiff, that tells you that there's going to be a lot of meat, a lot of fat in here that will not render, which means it will not melt. So whenever you're looking for a brisket, pick up the brisket and feel it a little bit to see if it has some give to it. If it doesn't, you might want to stay away from that brisket because it means that it has that much more thicker of a fat cap, and at the same time, it's going to have a lot of fat that will not render. The next thing I look for in a brisket when I'm looking to select a brisket from the market is how pliable is it, meaning how well does it move up and down. Because if this brisket is very stiff, if I grab it from here and there's no give to it, that tells you there's a lot of stiff fat in between that will not render throughout the cook. What that basically means is that when you finish smoking it and you start slicing into it, you're going to have some of that fat that is you're still gonna see the fat there, and it's not gonna melt away into the juices. Another thing that I look for is uniformity. If you look at this brisket from the moist part, which is your round part, to the flat, which is your lean part, I try to get it as close to the thickness this end to this end. Sometimes you go to go select a brisket, and you'll see some that have a very round part, and then it tapers off this way, very, very thin. Those are okay. You got to understand though, whenever you're going to smoke that brisket, this part that's a lot rounder, a lot thicker is going to take more time than this thin part. So you're risking getting a brisket that at the end, your flat, which is going to be a little bit dry to begin with, is going to be that much drier because this will be done real soon, and this one's going to take a lot longer. So that's another step that or another tip that I wanted to give you guys in regards to the meat. Now, when you're looking at the 3 main choices, I know there's a Wagyu or whatever that's called. This is an outrageous price. But when you're looking at prices of especially during briskets or at briskets, there's 3 main ones. Like I mentioned, you got the select, the choice, and the prime. There's typically about 10 to 20 cent difference per pound depending on the level you're at. And the reason that a lot of these, you see the same exact size brisket, that's, let's say, a 10 pounder for $30, and then there's another 10 pounder that's $45. The reason for it is because of the grade that they give this brisket. Now, one of the main things that they look at is how much of this meltable fat is trapped in between the fibers. All these little fats that you see here, that's good. That is good because when this starts to smoke, all of that on the inside is going to start to melt away, and that's going to go ahead and moisturize your meat that much more. Okay, so this is what they call marbling. So if you look at a brisket and it has a lot of little fat trapped in between the fibers, that's a good indication that it's going to be very, very tender when you're going to cook it. Here's a view from maybe the inside of the brisket. I don't know if you can see that right there, but there's a lot of fat that's trapped in between the fibers. All right, so that fat is going to render into the meat, or which means it's going to melt into the meat. All right, so those are a couple of tips that I wanted to go over. You always want to try to select a brisket that does have a nice little fat cap, but at the same time, not too much, because remember, you're paying at least $2.30 a pound or higher, and the last thing you want to do is come home and shave off 3 to 4 pounds worth of fat, and which you just pretty much paid for. You paid about $8 or $10 for a piece of brisket that you had to come in and trim yourself. Now, don't be afraid to ask the guy in the meat market or your butcher if they can bring out more briskets. Just tell them that you're looking for a different brisket, a bigger brisket, a smaller brisket, because a lot of the times they're waiting for the people to go and select those briskets that are in the display, and then they'll bring out the other ones. I've gone a number of times and I've told them, hey, you know what? Can you bring out another box or two so I can select the briskets that I want? By doing these small steps, looking at how pliable it is, looking at the uniformity, like how thick the thickness between one side to the other is, looking at possibly the marbling on the inside, how much fat is trapped on the inside. Those are 3 key steps that are going to get you a very, very tender brisket that you're not going to lose a lot of if you don't have this this major fat cap to work with. But also, I was walking through Walmart and I could not give this brisket up. It's more than I normally pay for. This one, if you can tell, I don't know if you can see there, but it's $3.48 a pound. I usually, for prime, I pay like $2.99 whenever I'm going to pay for prime. Usually here in Texas, your brisket, when it's on the average price, you're looking at $2.25 to $2.30 a pound. They used to be about $1.99 at some point, but they've stayed steadily at about $2.25 to $2.30 a pound. It's very rare when I go to the prime, and even more rare when I go above and beyond and go and pay almost $3.50 a pound. The reason I couldn't let this brisket go is because it was so pliable. There was almost no hard fat when I was touching this. You can see it's kind of squishy. The only part here is right here. This is normal right here. You're always gonna find a part right here that's normal, that's solid. But everything else, it was really good. And on top of that, I've never smoked a Angus beef brisket. So we're gonna go ahead and try that out. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you follow these simple tips, you're able to select a good brisket that's gonna render a lot, or it's gonna give you a lot of meat or a lot of bang for your buck. There's a lot of times when you buy a 12-pound brisket, but at the end you have like a 6 or 7 pounds worth of meat because you selected the brisket incorrectly. If you go in with these tools, with this knowledge, you can maybe get a 12-pound brisket, maybe get 10 pounds out of it, or 9.5, and that makes a big difference in how much brisket you're gonna end up getting per brisket. All right, this has been The Smoking Beard. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, please leave them down below. But happy smoking, guys.